So let's start with a scale of 1 to 5 using your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How are you feeling right now? How are you doing? Missing a few data points. And you're welcome to say 0 too. Okay. Okay, looks like I would say that using a robust statistical analysis of those data points, we are doing fair to middling and okay, all things considered on the whole, with a couple on either ends of the spectrum. So my question to you, and this is the part where now we'll open this up for discussion, is what are you concerned about generally? Is anyone willing to share what types of things are, on your mind right now? Anyone in particular at a 2 or a 3? Yeah, go ahead, Nicole.
So I think at this point, it's still balancing. I have an almost 18-month-old at home. And so going from full-time daycare to now full-time mom, especially because my partner is dealing actually with COVID stuff. So he's like COVID therapies. So he needs to like really be involved and take a lot of important calls. And so trying to balance that. And I think now the shift has been, but I think we kind of have things like that figured out because she also has decided to like have nightmares at night, not sleep, not want to nap. And she's decided now that she wants to nurse again, like a lot, not a normal one. So that's been a personal issue I've been dealing with. And I think professionally, I've gotten my class kind of figured out because we're doing it asynchronously. So I'm not meeting with them except for office hours. But I think it's the growing understanding that my fall class is going to be online. And I'm not teaching Tiny Earth this semester, and fall is when I would be. And so now it's wrapping my head around the fact that both personally, this is a longer term thing, but also with my teaching that I'm going to have to start thinking about what that's going to look like. And so this discussion, I think, is timely for that, for me to start accepting that and moving on.
Thank you, Nicole. Ellen, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm here for very largely the same reason. I'm teaching some lab classes this semester, but we were far enough into our semester that we could just kind of punt and modify and feel like we've all been blindsided by a pandemic and, get through this semester. But I'm also thinking ahead to fall and what an upper level microbiology class with some sort of scientific component to it might look like. And so I was wondering about the possibility of brainstorming about options related to the Tiny Earth database or any of the genomics analysis that's starting to be underway, if there could be any kind of crowdsourced projects that we might think about collaborating on or having our classes involved with.
Thank you, Ellen. Anyone else? What's generally concerning for you right now? Carolyn, and others, feel free to type in the chat window as well.
Yeah, so I think probably all of us, it's the uncertainty, right? Because we're not sure we're going to be online in the fall, but we might be online in the fall. And so how much prep work do we need to be doing for that? I mean, I guess it doesn't matter. We should prepare for it. And then if we don't go online, at least we can fall back on our regular in-class. But that to me is the biggest stressor, is just the uncertainty.
How about your students? What are your concerns about your students? What have you heard from them that they're concerned about? Heather, and then Carolyn.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I had one-on-one conversations with all of my students in my class last week. There's only 22 of them, so I'm lucky that I can do that. And when talking to them, several of them are working in essential positions, right? They're all upper level bio students. Most are pre-health. So a few are working as CNAs and resident assistants. So I worry about them a little bit. You know, they talked about the process they're going through of having to, all of the PPE they have to put on every day when they go in and all the checks they're getting. That was probably my biggest concern after talking with all of them.
Thanks, Heather. Carolyn, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I'm at an urban community college, and we just worry that we're going to lose a lot of students, not to dying to COVID, but that they're just they don't want to take online. They want to be there. They're losing their jobs. they don't have the resources to stay in school. They're caring, you know, for their families and everything. So we're already, I'm sure, like a lot of schools, we have a trend of declining enrollment, and this is going to give us a huge hit. Mm-hmm. So from the student perspective, the ones I've talked to, they have concerns about their education being interrupted and not being able to take the classes. So yeah, that's it. We've got a lot of students in healthcare as well. So, you know, same as what Heather was saying, but I think for them, it's more just they're just so stressed out about their lives. It's hard for them to think about school.
Yep. Enid, did you have your hand up? Mm-hmm.
Okay, can everyone hear me? So I'm in Sacramento, California, and we went online a few weeks ago, and we had gotten through quite a bit. But in addition to teaching Tiny Earth, I run a student retention program in our college for underrepresented students, first generation students, et cetera. So most of the students that go to Sacramento State, about 40% or more, are first generation students, low income students, and it's a minority serving institution. Mm-hmm. And so I've been doing some work around trauma informed teaching. Mm-hmm. And I can share some of the webinars I've been to. So it's not my area of study. I am a microbiologist by training, but I piloted a seminar yesterday because I had this sense that even my students who were really gung-ho about things were starting to fall by the wayside. And I started doing some surveys, and the anxiety is really high, the uncertainty is really high. I asked questions like, what do you wish your professors knew? And a lot of them, it's like that I am really trying, I'm not being lazy. I guess a lot of us are putting on really extra assignments and harder assignments and assignments with shorter turnaround time. And so it just really opened, you know, I have my small circle of colleagues that I've been still communicating with, luckily. But, you know, a lot of us are not in that situation. And so we're working in these vacuums. And so that's been something that's been really illuminating to me. But the science students that are in my seminar, they really valued learning about how trauma and stress physiologically affects us and all the reactions that they're having. So when I did a small survey of my class, they were like, oh, they were just feeling so bad about feeling tired all the time. They were feeling so bad about not being able to remember things. And that's just totally a normal physiological response. And so it was you know, I don't know if I would have given a seminar like this prior to the pandemic, but I'm glad that I did. And it's something that I've learned a lot about myself and for the students.
Thank you, Enid. That's incredibly important to look at this through the lens of what it is trauma for many of us and certainly for our students. I love that you're connecting it to the biological components of stress and what that actually leads to too. Like what a good way to bring that in. Anyone else with just a general comment about your worries about the world or your students? Yeah, Nicole?
Christine has a hand up, Christine Zolnick.
Hi.
Thank you.
Hi. Sorry. I'm on my phone because my husband's right now on a Zoom meeting using the Wi-Fi, so I wasn't sure if what's coming through or not. So that's an issue for me part of the time. But the bigger issue is I'm in New York, and I've had students that are starting to come down with COVID. I've had students that have parents that have COVID, and so one of the issues I'm dealing with is, trying to be as flexible as possible with their due dates. Like I've had students that start sending me their lab results just to prove it. I'm like, no, I don't need that. But clearly they think they do, or other teachers are requiring it. So I guess just trying my best ability to be there for them, but understanding that I'm probably not a priority. The class is not a priority, as it shouldn't be. Their health should be. And just kind of working around that is, I've had a number of students that are in that situation right now that have at least told me. So yeah, that's an issue I'm dealing with.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the reality of just the sheer numbers of people who have it, students and all of us. We do have Paulina, if I could call you out. So Paulina is in Italy. And do you want to just share a little bit about concerns
Well,
coming from
fortunately,
Italy?
can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Well, as you know, Italy is one of the most affected countries now, and I don't know if this program is I plan to do in September, and I am not sure if until September we will be free to go to sampling, for example, because now we cannot go out because we can go to the jail. So everything of my activities will be affected. And I was thinking to prepare an e-learning platform using a Moodle. Moodle is a program very famous to organize the lessons. It's an e-learning platform in the university. They told me that they will help me just to give the lessons, no in the laboratory, but I am trying to figure out how can they at least familiarize with the laboratory techniques. For example, Joe Vector, I don't know if you know Joe, J-O Victor is a platform when the students can go to watch the videos with the techniques in the laboratory. Maybe I will put in the chat, and it's very important platform. But I don't know if in September I will be ready because the things are very, very slow. We are still at home, so I don't know. It's my concern is is everything. All my plans are
Right.
are delayed now.
Thank you for sharing. I'm going to turn it over to Jen, who's monitoring the chat. Jen, do you want to share a few things that are coming through from there?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you all for sharing. Some of the things that are coming through in the chat are a lot about the fall. And I think in our mind here, it's just starting to be spring, and so that feels like a long time away. But that transition to fall, and if we're still going to be online, and how to teach labs. There is some concern and some awareness of the students and themselves and the care that they need, some of their own health, and then also financially, the situations that they may be in with possibly loss of jobs. There is also, I myself am in this, so I was happy to read this one about the homeschooling young children and how much time that takes. I thank you, Kristen. I have 3 young boys as well, and I spend about 8 to 10 hours a day on homeschooling. It's incredible. So thank you for bringing that to light and trying to balance that. So I think we all have a lot of different things we're balancing. Enid, your resources I think would be very valuable for all. So thank you for offering those. And I'll turn it back to Sarah.
Great. Okay. So thank you everyone for sharing your concerns, your global concerns. Let's shift the conversation about 35 degrees to talk about specific concerns about Tiny Earth. We've heard some general concerns about having to be online in the fall, and concerns about your students. The idea here is to think about what concerns you have specifically about if you are having to teach online in the fall, or even just what you're doing right now with respect to Tiny Earth. It might be, you've got a few weeks left in the semester or even longer, depending on your institution. And there are things that you're still sorting out or trying to figure out with respect to Tiny Earth, the wet lab being in this virtual or online space. Any particular things that you have found to be tricky with respect to shifting Tiny Earth into this online space and with the background of a pandemic? Josh?
I mean, probably the same concern as all of us, but data collection. So I've actually found that in some ways it's been nice to focus on conceptual things and have the time and space to explore some of the aspects of the work that we do. But the data collection, of course, has come to a halt. And for fall, I don't know what that looks like. If there will be opportunities to do any sort of data collection with students, at home or in dorms, if that's the case. But it would be great if, of course, we can continue along that line in some way.
Yeah, okay, so soil collection, data collection, definitely. Others? Enid, and then Carolyn.
So I was able to get through quite a bit through the DNA sequencing of the Tiny Earth curriculum. And I will agree with Josh that it's really given us an opportunity. My students are upper level students, and so I usually do some things a little bit differently. But, a lot of our students really just like to do a lot of wet lab work, right? Like that's what they perceive science to solely be. And it really isn't the only part of that. And so we've just taken the opportunity to talk about how other things in terms of experimental design, really thinking about, especially we were really close to doing our chemical extractions. And so what does that look like in the pharmaceutical space? Like in terms of what kind of experiments could we do to test for eukaryotic testing, right? So why would it be important to do that? And then the second thing that we've done is really look at the database. And so I have 2 years worth of data in the database. And we just looked at our class data, and they realized that, they weren't as careful as entering their data into the database. So their question, because I said, I'm meeting with everybody tomorrow. And so you bought me some time, is that, they want to go back and fix it. They want to go back and be able to curate this as a group and say, like, oh, I didn't understand what this meant. Like, look at this column. Like, there's all this stuff, but we didn't do this work. Or I entered the escape data wrong. I want to fix it. But once we publish the database, I had asked Nicole to do this, like, in a panic. I'm like, if we publish this, could you just do this? But we didn't have the opportunity to do the quality control because I was just, like a chicken with my head cut off. And so I just kind of asked for that to happen. So then now they want to fix it. They want that their results that are out to the world to have the integrity that it should have. So it's been an important lesson on data recording and how important that is. And I don't know if we didn't have this situation, if we would have ever felt that out. So that's in trying to look for silver linings in a situation where there's so few. That's, I guess, one of them.
Thanks, Enid. Carolyn?
Sorry, I was just writing down a note about, future note to self, make sure students look at database before they start entering their data. I was wondering if anybody had considered, aside from like Paulina, where you can't go outside, actually having students do the wet lab work at home with a kit. So I teach an online non-majors biology class with a lab, and they buy a kit from eScience Labs. And so they do the stuff at home. But with this project, I know there's a certain point where you can't do the PCR at home, right? But a lot of the initial plating and screening and stuff, they might be able to do, except I didn't know about the safety aspects of it. So if there might be some sort of compromise level where they can do something. Anyway, it just started going through my mind that, well, with planning far enough in advance, that something like that could possibly be put together to do part of the project, at least in the fall, with them actually collecting data. And if anybody else has thought about that.
Any responses to Carolyn? Lee?
So just based on, I know the way our university is going to look at it is because when we're working with an unknown soil isolate, it's automatically BSL2. We're not going to be able to do that at home with students.
Mm-hmm. And Samantha?
I was kind of thinking the same thing about the BSL2 level, but I wonder if they could just dilute and plate the soil and then like throw the plates away, just to at least have that experience of seeing what grows out. But I guess that we would have to follow up with all our individual biosafety offices.
Nicole?
Yeah, so I think obviously this would be conversations that we have to have with our institution, because when we're typically on campus, there's also certain things that the institution insurance covers and things like that. And so that's something to keep in mind. However, for unknowns, it's considered BSL 1 level practice that if the plates are done and then like sealed with tape and then never opened, that's okay. It's that because we're taking unknowns and doing that. So one thing to maybe think about though, and we have time maybe to do that, is could we create kits of previously known isolates that we have from our labs that are BSL 1 level that students could then perhaps screen. So maybe they're ones, so the thing is we would need to know the 16S information. We need to have information on them. Or they're things that have been sent to tech that maybe we could think about something like this if people are in a position where they haven't had all of this screening. That's maybe something to think about, because sometimes we've only screened on one type of media, or we've only screened against a couple of escapes for those. And so that's something where maybe we could be a bit creative about, Carolyn, and that could offer something, but I think still in conversation with our biosafety officers and trying to figure out what's feasible. But certainly we should start making a list of those types of things so that we can think about what would something like that really look like, and how would it operate. But
really, yeah, I like that idea of some sort of a kit that allows this to move forward. Other concerns for Tiny Earth? Nick?
Oops, there we go. Was it Enid that was asking about the sequencing? One of the companies I've used in the past for sequencing, you can just mail the plate in and identify what you want them to see. They'll do colony PCR off your plate. It's just thrown out there. I'm having the same issues that Lee is, trying to figure out a way to run the course when we start back up, and the BSL2 issues. So, and then sending them cultures to use as their safe relatives on the plates and getting them to, but yeah, I'm with Lee. I'm kind of in a rock and a hard place. But there's a sequencing. It wasn't needed. It was Carolyn maybe that was asked about the sequencing. But yeah, there are places. I think the company I used for that was Retrogen. They're out of California. So that's all I got.
Okay. Jen, I'll send it over to you for anything in the chat window.
Okay, we had a few comments about different e-learning resources, so I encourage you to check the chat window for that. Another idea was mixing in Lysobacter as a positive control with a bunch of BSL-1 non-antibiotic producers. And I would encourage you all to use the chat window for other ideas. That's all I have right now.
Yeah, can I follow up too on Paulina? You had a question here that's more about the online learning component than the lab component. Or is this a question or is this a comment? Just Moodle for e-learning courses. You'll need to unmute. Yep.
No, it's not a question. It's just a proposal. It's an option that I can use, because in September, as I said before, I am not sure if we will be able to be everybody return to our regular lives. So trying to just resolve in the best way, because I want to do it. I was thinking that September is a very good date, but it's not like this. Maybe this is still for a long time safety for the security. I was thinking in create the e-learning course using Moodle, and also maybe the university can help me to organize the students in small groups, just to keep the distance. For example, even 4 tables, 1 student per table, to keep distance. And in 1 week, maybe they can do the laboratory, the wet lab, the wet working. That's it. Maybe I will know maybe in July what is happening. Depends of the numbers, the statistics.
How has the transition to the online component of interacting with your students been for people? Any stories to share? Works or what hasn't? Josh?
One silver lining has been that I've been doing more sort of like short essay kind of responses to showing a video, or some sort of exercise that we can do, and having students supply answers in written form. And that was something that I wasn't doing much inside the classroom. And it's been really nice to get to know the students' sort of intellectual, their minds in a way that you may not have seen or have been overlooked in class, especially more introverted students. So that's been rather rewarding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Has the transition been smooth for everyone? Yeah, Enid, go ahead.
So agreeing with Josh, we do paper discussions every other Wednesday, and we had gotten to, what's it called? We had gotten through so many that I didn't want to stop them, even though I knew it would be a little laborious for the last few students to do it, but we talked about it.
Mm-hmm.
And like their discussions on the chat are so much more vibrant, because they don't have to say things out loud, but they are all showing their faces and stuff like that. So they're interacting, they're making comments, they're doing stuff. And so it's almost like when we go back, it's like, do I want to have my discussion online and then like meet in lab in person? Like, it's just so bizarre. And so I was like, wow, they're talking more now. But I will say I had a really cohesive class to begin with. So I feel very fortunate. I don't know how well this would have gone if I had my last time that I ran Tanny Earth, if I would have had the same output. But it really got me to thinking about how we share or how we ask students to participate in class and how we evaluate that as kind of always saying something out loud, but how can we look at it differently? That made me think about that.
Yeah, interesting. Nicole.
As a follow-up to something specifically Enid said about the nature of her class, I think Roberto pointed this out, as some of you are starting classes for the first time with a group of people you've never interacted with in person. And I was talking to a colleague about that yesterday for another, because she's on a similar system. And so I think that's something that may, if you've not done online classes before, how you make those connections both with your students and then also kind of create a cohesive working environment, discussion environment amongst your students can be tricky. So if people have advice for those of us who haven't done online classes before about how to do that, I think that would be really helpful for a number in the community who are trying to figure out and on that sort of teaching frame.
Deborah, I see you have your hand up.
Hi. So I was going to say it depends on the population. So with my freshmen, it's been an incredible struggle. I've lost half of them. Most of them don't sign in at all. And if they do, and I put them in breakout rooms, they just drop out completely and send me their worksheets later. So they have been a struggle to work with. My upperclassmen, they're a little different. They're a lot more motivated, so they'll interact and it's been okay. And I've found that just being vulnerable and just open and honest with them, they respond to that. So like they'll ask me, so how's it going for you? And I'm like, it's for the birds. It sucks. I hate it. I'm like, here, I miss y'all. Don't tell anybody that. The message will now self-destruct type of thing. But I find that, being honest and open with them about how I'm dealing with things leads them to be more open with us. But the freshmen are a struggle. That if anyone has any suggestions, I would love to hear them. I've gone to the point now where I'm doing worksheets online, and only if you sign in do you get the credit for that. That's still not inspiring them. Might also be the 9 a.m. class, but yeah, I'm struggling with the freshmen.
Yeah. Anyone else having the freshman first year student issue?
So it's just me then. Okay.
Samantha.
It's probably me.
And then Samantha first, then Ellen.
So for me, I'm not teaching right now, so it's not specific to the class, but our department, we decided to have like town halls with all the, like just an open Zoom session where the undergrads can join or not and discuss any concerns they had. And we found that there was, I don't know if other people are doing that, but we found that there was a really good response to that. And a lot of the students appreciated just a space to be able to talk openly about their concerns and their anxiety.
Thank you. Ellen?
I didn't really have anything. I just wanted to assure Deborah that my silence was that I'm not teaching first years this semester. I'm sure I would have the same problems if I was.
I'll turn it to Jen. Anything in the chat that you'd like to share?
So again, I thank you for those who are posting things. I would encourage you to take a look, and Amy and myself will be pulling things from the chat. There's a lot of links there, and Sarah at the end is going to talk about another resource. So thank you for sharing those links, and we'll start compiling those together as well. So there's a lot of interesting online tools for remote labs and different suggestions there. Also a question about the status of the Tiny Earth genome sequencing work. We have a handful of genomes, not a ton. We have had a very slow trickle back, but we are working on some materials. Most of those genomes were other schools, so we're kind of working on some things that we can get out. No new genomes are being sent right now, clearly because everybody is shut down. A question about receiving escape strains. And I think, again, yes, we have, I think, 1 person out of 40 that's allowed to go back in the lab. So we're not sending, we're shut down at Tech, and I suspect many other locations. So yes, please continue to use the chat. Thank you for posting your things, and we'll collect the links for a compiled document afterwards.
Yeah, and I'll just open it up if any of you who have posted a specific tool in here that you want to call out. I'll just pause for a second in case you want to share verbally what you've put in the chat about a specific tool. Jessica.
Morning. Yes, so the Labster, I really have been impressed with the Labster simulation labs, because it's not just watching someone else do it. You actually have to go in and interact. So you, like the biosafety one is pretty good, and you have to spray down the hood, and learning, like they throw stuff in your eyes and you have to go over to the eye wash and rinse, and they make it all blurry so you can't see what's going on as you find your way to the eye wash and rinse out your eyes. And then they had a making solutions one where you had to weigh everything out on the balance, and you had to tear the balance and put the weigh boat on. So it's very step by step. And I know they have microbiology and PCR. So I haven't tried those out yet, but I know Labster right now is offering free trials of a lot of their labs because of what's going on. So I highly encourage people to go check out those Labster's labs and see if you think they're up to the standards of a college level course. Anyways, that's it.
Thanks, Jessica.
Thank you.
And it looks like people are sharing some additional resources there. Great. Anyone else who's shared a resource care to speak about it? Okay, so, oh, sorry, go ahead, Samantha.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
I was in a panic last night and looking online, and I found one from an American university. I don't remember which university it is, but it was basic, but there was like similar sort of click and do a gram stain, and it shows you your result, and it actually took me 5 tries to get a nice result. So so it's interactive.
Yeah, great. Well, with this, this is a natural transition to where we hoped we would get to today, which is to share ideas and tricks and tips and resources, whatever it is that you've found or that you have developed or that you have blatantly and politely credited but ripped off from others to use and adapted to your situation. We'd love to hear things that are working. This is your chance to share things that you've been working on in this transition time. And Catherine, I'm going to call you out eventually, if not immediately. So we'll go to Josh first.
So I can't remember where I saw this video first, and apologize if I ripped it off from someone else, but the Harvard Mega Plate, the Mega Dish video, where it just shows the resistance developing to higher levels of an antibiotic. That video has been really useful and as a prompt for students to describe what's happening accurately using terminology and not confusing things like antibiosis and antibiotic resistance, and properly using mutation and selection and population rather than the individual, things like that, to really get after the subtleties of evolution and natural selection and things related to that. So that was a success, I think.
Thanks, Josh. Enid, did I see your hand up, or was that just a movement there? Okay. Roxana, go ahead.
So I just wanted to say that, I mean, we didn't have a chance to start the Tiny Earth project, but we wanted to introduce the students to them at least, to it. So I went to the Tiny Earth website with, the web links, And there is one of the colleges, I forgot, NT, they have a lot of videos, and we were able to use some of them. They are very good, and they have a bunch of videos, and at least, and we want to have the students to do a project just on Tiny Earth, at least something, because we have a lot of students, so and now we don't have anything else. I mean, like somebody was mentioning, maybe work with Carolina in the future, I mean, for the fall, or I don't know. I mean,
Yeah, so you're talking about the videos that are behind the password on the Tiny Earth website for the
yes.
instructors. Okay, yep, thank you. Yeah, so right, so a few TEPIs have created lots of different videos there, little tutorials and things for the students that there's no need to reinvent the wheel. Those are right there for the taking. I did paste a link in the chat window just now, which is not the same thing, but those videos are embedded within that document. I'll just take a second to, go ahead. I'll talk about the Tiny Earth resources we have on the web in a little bit once we've shared here. So go ahead, Enid.
So I have a question about one of the exercises on that digital resource, which is with having to do with the database. Because I tried to do that. It's the one that's a Google Doc, and I don't know who developed it, so I don't know who to ask. So when I download the entire database and try to go through the assignment myself, I can't complete it. So, and then the database is too big to do anything with Excel. And so I did, that's why I had my students just look at the isolates that they looked at. And so I think that exercise that's posted on there is great. I just I think that there's something that I think with how the database downloads now, or some of the fields that might be included now that may not have been there in the past. But that I will say that I did everything just like that assignment, and I was not able to get it to work. And so I just didn't know if anybody here had developed that, or if that was something that that was a question that I had regarding one of the resources.
Yeah, can you just say which, so I'm looking at the website right now. I'm assuming you're talking about under the Tiny Earth database activity suggestions and resources.
Right, it's a Google form. It's an assignment in a Google form.
Yes, all right. I know what you're talking about. That's a graduate student here. Josh, do you know any more about this? This was an activity by Sydney, and maybe you can speak to it. But if not, I can, Enid, I could put you in touch with her easily.
That would be fantastic.
And then perhaps we can tweak it so that it's accomplishing what needs to be done.
Yeah, because I think my students would really love to do something like that. And that's why we did I said, let's do the smaller one with just our isolates, because they can kind of do some pivot tables or whatever in Excel. But, that I really enjoyed the introduction that was there about this is big data, this is what we're going to be dealing with. And that excited them as something, a new skill.
Yeah.
But I don't know. That's just something that I came across.
Yeah. Yeah. Any additional info, Josh?
Yeah, I'll make contact with Sydney and ask her if there's an easier way to access what you need to access, because the software that she was using, the online platform, is really nice. The students, this is something that we piloted in the fall, and it was really useful, I think, for the students. So I'll check in with her and see if I can find out any more information that would make things easier for everybody else.
That's great. I just, the second link I pasted in there, which unfortunately they all just run together. Anyways, the bottom one is linking directly to this activity that Enid and Josh are talking about. And it's set up as a Google form. And Sydney did say anyone of you has permission to make your own form or copy it and use it for your purposes too.
I do know, sorry, one more thing. I do know that Sydney had downloaded the data from the database, into her own spreadsheet in which she cleaned up some of the data. So she produced a spreadsheet from that spreadsheet, if that answers your question.
Other suggestions, things that people have used that worked. Ellen.
Well, right now I'm just trying to link everything to coronavirus. I'm teaching a genetics course right now, and we'll do microbiology in the fall. And frankly, it's hard to imagine teaching about anything else. It's a really, just kind of a crazy time bouncing back and forth between the day-to-day minutia of what button do I push to get their grade recorded, and the big existential questions of what does it mean to be living through a pandemic. But so I've been trying to find simple journal articles that are coming out. We're studying genomics right now, and learning about what genomic analyses have informed us in terms of coronavirus origins and things like that. But I imagine doing a lot more of that kind of thing in microbiology in the fall as well.
Yeah. Have others integrated COVID content into Tiny Earth? And if so, how? Samantha.
Sorry, we haven't integrated it, but the question came up as to whether bacterial metabolites could be antiviral. And I don't know if anyone has the answer to that question because we didn't know.
Nicole?
So what happens where we see antibiotics be successful for therapy is usually due to either preventing secondary bacterial infections that can happen, especially when it's this respiratory lung disease. But the other thing is we know that a number of antivirals are actually boosting of other immune system properties. And so it could be that the peripheral impact on physiology, whether it's even epithelial integrity or adaptive immune responses, so it's cellular immune responses, that just these secondary impacts can lead to an effect. It's why some people anecdotally will tell you, well, I had a viral infection, but I went on an antibiotic and I got better. And so it's often sometimes because actually it does help them, and it might be because it's boosting other physiological responses. But we know that more often than not, the concern is that the pressure on possible antibiotic resistance developing is far more of a concern than using it in these therapeutic approaches.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Other coronavirus integration into the curriculum?
I was just going to say, as a natural products person, that there certainly are examples of natural products that are antiviral. I mean, chloroquine, whether it works or not, that maybe is up for debate, but that's a natural product from a plant. But I think it's totally reasonable to suppose that the microbes might be making something that would inhibit COVID-19, not for an ecological reason, but just by happenstance of the types of molecules that tend to show activities against one target often have the same kind of properties that would make them, hit against something else. And so I think it's relevant. I don't know how I'm not sure what the screening looks like for that and things like that.
Catherine. Christine, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, so I'm teaching a full Tiny Earth course, and we integrated I did at least one lecture just on COVID in general because they're interested, but we'd also talked a lot about the epidemiology of it and things that are just concepts that they should understand just in terms of any infectious disease. And then I also gave them a homework. There's a ton of stuff going around on social media, and there were some that had the science wasn't quite there. And so I had them go through each step of this thing that was on social media to kind of go through and talk about if they think this is accurate, if they don't, why, and they had to go into, searches on Google to try to find out different things. And a lot of it had to do with, sequencing, mutation, transmission, stuff like that. And so they were able to, based on just the stuff they learned for bacteria, they were able to kind of talk about this stuff in terms of, those things I just mentioned. So it kind of also allowed them to look at things that are on social media. And I told them, I'm like, you are in science, in a few years, you're going to have people in your life that are going to be asking you questions about things like this, because you do have a science background. And so you being able to decipher what is accurate and what is not, being able to use appropriate sources is really important. So that's kind of how I incorporated it.
Good. Yeah. Any other COVID specific or other resources that you've used to transition Tiny Earth? Heather? Oh, you're still muted.
How about now? I just posted a link on the side. It's not for how I switched Tiny Earth over to discussing COVID-19, but it was one I found through NABT. It's a set of Google Slides by Eric Simon, and he's been updating it really regularly, like almost every day regularly with new information, so it stays current. And that's one that I had shared with my students and had them dig into a little bit, just like you were saying, for them to be more informed, to share with other people, family members and friends that know they're in micro right now.
Great. Anyone else? Carolyn.
I'm not teaching Tiny Earth this semester, but in the class I am teaching, we've been using, Carl Zimmer's been publishing some stuff in the New York Times that are nice overview, good graphics. One of the recent ones that actually has the entire genome of the coronavirus and what each section of it codes for, and a little explanation about what that part does. So it's just a good resource, to include.
Good, good, good. Catherine, is this a good time to call on you to perhaps share the work that you've been doing with the group on Tiny Earth chemistry generally, but also just specifically some things that you've already been adapting that might be relevant to this conversation?
Sure. So I've been working with a couple other folks on developing a Tiny Earth chemistry course that's sort of a spin-off of the existing microbiology course. And one of the things that was true about the course long before this COVID stuff happened is we were trying to make use of a lot of online resources, recognizing that the chemistry lab, resources at different institutions varies widely, even again, pre-COVID. So in particular, there are two modules, I guess, to the course that are completely online and that might be of use to folks that you could potentially pull in. One is a genome mining type exercise, which Kristen Labby at Beloit College had developed something, and then I think was in the process of piloting it. And that resource is on the site that that Sarah shared. And then I'm working on, there's more than that. So I've been working on some metabolomics type exercises where, a postdoc in Joe's lab, Deepa Acharya, has collected mass spectrometry data on a number of Tiny Earth strains. And that data is public, and it's possible to use this GNPS interface that's at UCSD, which is all free and public, to mine that data and look for what kinds of molecules are these Tiny Earth bacteria producing, some of them, so that, you know, some of them show library hits to known antibiotics. So even just recognizing like, oh, there's known antibiotics in here, that might be the source. But the way that the way that this tool works, you can also recognize molecules that are similar, structurally similar to each other. And so, you know, students can't, the exercise that I've drafted up, which is not on that page, Sarah, I need to make sure and get you the right link. So that if we want to have it on the resource page, but so hopefully it'll be there soon. But students can walk through and find a known antibiotic and then look at what are all the molecules that are also produced that are structurally similar to that natural product, and they can form hypotheses about what might be the structural differences between those. So anyway, so that's an exercise that has been written. It has not been piloted, so you'd want to try it out first and make sure you can walk through it. But I've used lots of screenshots and tried to make it as sort of step-by-step, easy to follow as possible. What I haven't written yet, and what I really would like to write, and would have already written if I didn't have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old that I'm homeschooling right now, is a more like, I guess, informational chapter sort of supporting the exercise. So the exercise, I think I encourage you to try it out and see what you think. But in terms of like interpreting it and you know, having students have the background, which I hope to write at a level that is intended for, you know, freshmen, you know, non-majors, should be very accessible, hopefully. But I need to write it. So that's the sort of background information. So that is one thing. And actually there's a follow-up exercise to that I've drafted that's in a more preliminary stage of the draft that would look at not just looking at a single strain and the metabolites that are there, but looking big picture at a whole bunch of tiny earth strains and which ones are chemically similar or different to each other, and doing a little bit of like PCA and looking at things statistically. That exercise I also hope to have available as well. And then hopefully whatever I write, I can support both of the exercises. And then separate from that, there's a postdoc in Bill Gerwick's lab at UCSD who has been writing some information related to an NMR-based structure elucidation type tool, also free and publicly available. And, you know, in an ideal world, if we had lab facilities, students who have an NMR could acquire the data and then determine the structure using the tool. But in the absence of that, there's lots of sample data available. And so students could take a sample data set, upload it to the tool, and then have it return a list of candidate compounds. So for students who don't know anything about NMR, to be able to go from a data set that's pretty much point and click to generate on an NMR spectrometer, they could then go from that to at least a family of compounds that are likely candidates. So those are some things we're working on. You would be encouraged to try them out and give us feedback. Let us know how things work out.
Thank you, Catherine. Are there any questions for Catherine? And if not, I'm going to screen share the and just walk through the digital resources that we've been collecting for you on the Tiny Earth website. Is that working? Yeah, okay, great. So if you just go to the home page of Tiny Earth, you will see a pink strip that will take that says COVID resources, and that will take you directly to this. We're generating this obviously in the era of COVID. I suspect that many of these resources will persist as helpful for your other courses as well through the years to come. We designed this so that it was serving the purpose of meeting the needs of the Tiny Earth partner instructors and providing a platform where everybody could share any resources they came across or ideas, just as we have been doing today, and collate those that are specific to Tiny Earth, but also that are generally useful for teaching STEM labs. There are a lot of other resources about, teaching online generally or teaching science generally, but when this all first started happening, there seemed to be a real dearth of information about how to contend with a lab course, and specifically something that's, so intensively lab-based, like a cure, which Tiny Earth is. So the resources that you have here, as you can see, the digital labs and activities, there are a few links out to other folks who have done some aggregation of information or providing forums and chats. And then the next section is about general resources for digital science and labs. You can see Labster is one of those resources listed here. We were pretty friendly and open to, general topics. You can see there are things from ecology and earth sciences as well as life sciences. So quite broad, quite general. Skyping a scientist, lots of different things. And then the next section is specific ideas for Tiny Earth labs or activities. And so an example is what Catherine just mentioned. We've got some of those resources here, and then what Enid was talking about earlier with the Google form that we showed. So there are lots of links. This is the link to the video library of labs. Samantha, I think that was you that brought that up. I apologize if it was somebody else. So there's a link directly here to those, and you can see here's Angelo, who is here in Wisconsin at Northeast Wisconsin Technical College, who's created all kinds of videos for his students about how to do these things, and you're welcome to use that. HHMI has some bio-interactive resources for bacterial identification, very relevant. And then we talked about these a little earlier, some suggestions around the database and resources. Phylogeny, any genomic activities, these lend themselves very well to being dry labs rather than wet labs, of course. Here's an example of a soil activity that you might use. And then toward the end, at the beginning of this, we had a couple of TEPIs who sent us media coverage that they had received as COVID was first starting out. You can see these are dated back to March 11th, March 5th even, where, their local media sources and like this is the UW Green Bay Global Studies panel. We're looking for microbiologists to talk about the biology of the virus and or what it might mean with respect to what was then an epidemic and is now called a pandemic. If you know of more of these types of things, please just send them to the Tiny Earth email or to me directly, and we'll make sure that they get posted here on the website. If you have any ideas for activities and resources, please send those as well. Like Catherine mentioned, these don't have to be completely done or even fully tested. We can put those caveats on them for you, or if whatever link you give us, you can have those at the top too. The idea is that this doesn't need to be a peer-reviewed publication level production, but rather an opportunity to say, I'm trying this, or I tried this, and let's be honest and open about how vetted things are. But the more we can be sharing, the less we have to reinvent the wheel ourselves. So please send suggestions that you have for these sections. And then there are just some other general ideas folks sent us. They sort of came in the form of they came in the form of, what if students just film some things and then you had the students score X, Y, and Z on the video, that sort of thing. So really general ideas. And then finally, just general open educational resources and teaching guidance, specific science ed resources, recommendations for what you might say to your lab group. And then this is a short section on accessibility. A colleague of mine had created a nice segment on accessibility, and so I just would link out to that. But again, if you have thoughts or ideas, I mean, in particular, something so simple as putting closed captions on any of the videos you create. You can do that in YouTube. It isn't perfect, but it's pretty darn good. And so, those are you may have your own software at your institution too that maybe even does a better job of transcribing. So, really thinking about the situations the students are in, folks who have disabilities, who have learning disabilities, or who are otherwise differently abled may need additional resources to support them in this time. And then finally, just some links to various Facebook accounts and just some credit for contributors. So that is available for you as a living, breathing document that you can take what you wish, adapt as you need, and contribute as you want to.